I'll be talking on caudal preservation in mitral valve replacement. I am Dr. Utkarsh Sanghvi. So mitral valve replacement is one of the very commonest valve surgery performed in cardiac, vascular and thoracic surgery. So in the previous lectures, we have learnt about the mitral valve anatomy and also about the various approaches at the mitral valve. Today we'll talk about caudal preservation. So the ultimate aim in the mitral valve surgery is to provide a competent, that is non-regurgitant and non-obstructive or non-stenosis mitral valve without compromising the left ventricular function. So these are generally met in the mitral valve surgeries with the conservative approaches like mitral valve repairs, which we'll be discussing in the next lectures as well. So a large number of patients in our country are not feasible for mitral valve repairs. They need to undergo mitral valve replacement, and this subgroup of patients should undergo preservation, that is caudal preservation, to preserve the left ventricular function. First, we'll start with a few slides on mitral valve anatomy. I know it's been discussed in the previous lectures, but to get oriented with this lecture, we'll just go through the anatomy. So as we all know, mitral valve is a bicuspid valve which has a subvalvular apparatus. The subvalve apparatus of mitral valve consists of chordae and papillary muscles. In normal hearts, the mitral valve annulus is round in diastole and ellipsoidal in systole. And in systole, the mitral valve orifice decreases by almost 25% and the circumference of the annulus reduces by around 30%. So coming to the subvalve anatomy, there are two papillary muscles. As we all know, they are anterolateral and posteromedial papillary muscles. Both of these papillary muscles give rise to chordae, and these chordae are attached to both the anterior and posterior mitral leaflets. As you can see in this slide, on the left hand side to my and right on yours is the anterolateral papillary muscle, and on the opposite side is the posteromedial papillary muscle. Both of them are giving the chordae which are attached to both the AML and the PML. The chordae of the mitral valve are of three types, either primary, secondary or tertiary. The primary chordae are attached to the edge of the leaflet, whereas the secondary chordae are attached to the undersurface of or the ventricular side of the leaflet, and the tertiary chordae are attached exactly at near the ventricular septal side. The AML has all the three types of chordae, that is primary, secondary and tertiary, whereas the PML has only secondary and tertiary chordae. And the chordae on the AML insert either on the rough zone or the clear zone. This all has been described previously in the mitral valve anatomy. So first we'll understand the physiology, how the mitral valve works and what is the role of the subvalve apparatus. In 1922, Wiggers and Katz and later even Rushmer and his team proposed the concept of annuloventricular continuity. So according to this concept, the left ventricular geometry and the function are a result of the dynamic interaction between the mitral valve annulus and the left ventricular wall. These attachments between the mitral valve annulus and the LV wall, which is nothing but the subvalve apparatus, moderate the LV distension both during the diastole and the wall tension during the systole. When the papillary muscles contract during the isometric phase of the cardiac cycle, the closed mitral valve is drawn downwards into the LV cavity. Thus, this reduces the longitudinal axis of the left ventricle and increasing its short axis. So the bulbospiral muscles play a very important role in this. And because of this interaction, the myocardial fibers stretch additionally and generate more tension, leading to greater contraction and an increase in the stroke volume. And so during systole, the ventricle undergoes counterclockwise torsion deformation of the apex with respect to the base. During isometric relaxation and in early diastole, this is exactly reversed. So we call it as diastolic recoil. So first we'll come to the history of the caudal preservation. It was way back in 1964 when Lillehei introduced the concept of caudal preservation during mitral valve replacement. He did this because he felt that the problem of post-operative low cardiac output syndrome can be reduced. However, there were people who opposed this, and then no one accepted the protocol of preserving chordae during mitral valve replacement. But later in 1981, David reintroduced the concept of mitral valve replacement with caudal preservation after his study of mitral valve replacement in dogs. In his study, he showed that LV function deteriorated if the chordae were transected, that is not preserved, but remained unchanged when the chordae were intact. He also compared resting preoperative and postoperative LV function and also exercise induced changes after mitral valve replacement, both with caudal preservation and without caudal preservation in patients who had chronic mitral regurgitation. The LV function showed a decline in those who had caudal transection, but whereas it was preserved in those whom he had preserved chordae. Also in the caudal preservation group, there was better long-term systolic function and LV performance both at rest as well as after the exercise. So he also demonstrated increase in LV end diastolic pressure after caudal transection and conventional MVR, whereas this decreased after MVR with caudal preservation. So now we'll study what are the effects of caudal transection. Gams and his company demonstrated that caudal transection in a working dog heart led to an increase in the long axis of the left ventricle, followed by a reduction in the contractility. The LV stroke volume could then be maintained only by higher preload and up to 30% increase in the fiber force. So this shows how much important it was to preserve the chordae. Later, Henson and his team demonstrated that transection of the chordae to the anterior mitral leaflet reduced the LV function to a greater degree as compared to the transection of the chordae to the PML. So they proved that the chordae of anterior mitral leaflet are more important than the chordae of the posterior mitral leaflet. So he hypothesized that preservation of the subvalve apparatus improved left ventricular systolic performance by reduction of the LV afterload. He also proved that caudal transection shortened the long axis of the left ventricle and dilatation of the chamber. So then came a study done in the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi by Dr. Sachin Talwar and his team. Even Dr. Sampath Kumar sir was a part of his study. So what they did was they compared the function of the chordae and the papillary muscle to a pair of gymnasts on a parallel bar, as you can see on this diagram. So the gymnast or the chordae, they move towards the parallel bar and during contraction, and they bring the floor, that is the LV wall, with them, and in addition they prevent the outstretching of the LV cavity. When either of the chordae are transected as shown in the down figure number 2a, so only one gymnast will work to bring the unsupported LV cavity towards the mitral valve annulus, and it will have to work more. But whereas when both the anterior and posterior chordae are divided, the gymnast or the chordae don't have any arms to pull themselves up, and in an attempt to reach the bars, they have to jump higher and higher and higher. But with each attempt, they sink lower and lower, resulting in dilatation of the LV cavity and thinning of its walls. When all the chordae are intact, the gymnasts are free to do their work. So this is the diagram done by Dr. Sachin Talwar and his team. So they have compared the two parallel bars which suggests the mitral valve annulus in the heart. The chordae and the subvalvular apparatus are denoted by the gymnast with both their arms, whereas the floor is means the LV cavity is denoted by the floor. In this figure 2, you can see when one of the chordae is transected, either AML chordae or the PML chordae, the remaining chordae has to work more and more to bring the floor or the LV cavity upwards during each systole. And whereas in the figure 2b, where you see both the chordae are transected, so the gymnast cannot come up, that is the LV cavity cannot come up, and it tries to contract more and more, but ultimately it cannot happen and it goes on dilating, resulting that the LV geometry is lost. So now what happens during the mitral valve disease? As we all know that in chronic MR, the LV function gradually declines. The regurgitation into the left atrium during systole, which we call it as a regurgitant stroke volume, is added to the forward stroke volume and tends to increase the total forward output and the ejection fraction in the early phase. However, progressive LV dilatation increases the wall tension as per the Laplace's law, which leads to increased systolic wall stress and also increases the afterload. But after MVR, there is a rapid increase in the LV afterload, and the adaptation of the LV to change this change depends on the annuloventricular continuity. Fixation of the mitral valve annulus with a rigid prosthesis further interferes with the distension and the contraction of the varus constrictors. Whereas for patients who are undergoing mitral valve replacement for mitral stenosis, the LV is small, and because of severe subvalve fusion and which is generally fused in all cases, rigid and calcified leaflets, the annulus loses its sphincter-like function. Excision of the valve with chordae does not produce the picture of reduced preload and increased afterload as was observed after MVR for chronic MR. But the loss of annuloventricular continuity still depends on the progressive LV dilatation and with eventual decline of LV function in the long term. So now we'll study different techniques of chordal preservation. The first described by Dr. Lillehei in 1964, which was he did the chordal preservation which he didn't name it after himself. So it's just named as the posterior mitral leaflet chordal preservation. So here the posterior mitral leaflet is bound to the annulus with a running stitch. So what we do is we detach the posterior mitral leaflet from the annulus and then attach it downwards on the posterior mitral leaflet side. And what Dr. Lillehei reported reduction in the operative mortality from 37% to 14%. Second, in 1981, Dr. David came with his technique, which is named after his name, Dr. David's technique. So what is done, as you can see in the figure, the AML is incised at its base and the incision is extended on both sides 2 to 3 mm away from the attachment, and it's carried out on both the sides towards both the sides of the commissures, and it is then the incision is then extended towards the edge of the leaflet, and the triangular portion of the segment of AML is excised, leaving the chordae attached to the remaining leaflet. And then the remaining AML is resuspended to the mitral valve annulus by sutures used to secure the prosthetic valve, and the posterior mitral leaflet with its chordae is left intact. So what are the advantages of the David's technique? It helps to maintains the maintenance of the chordae it maintains the chordae in the natural anatomic orientation. It also reduces the risk of left ventricular outflow tract obstruction and also reduces the bulk of the leaflet tissue. So the third technique of chordal preservation is the Ficki's technique. It is one of the most commonly used technique in the Indian subcontinent, where the use of the mechanical tilting disc valve, the Indian made TTK Chitra valve, is very common. So here what we do is with the AML, the anterior mitral leaflet is split from the center of the free edge towards the annulus. So we started from the free edge of the leaflet. In David's technique, what we were doing is we were incising at the base of the leaflet and extending toward both the sides. Here we start from the edge of the leaflet and go towards the annulus and extend the incision on both sides towards the commissures, and the resulting two halves of the leaflets along with the intact chordae are trimmed to remove the thickened and calcified areas, and the remaining tissue which is left over after decalcification and debulking is then rotated posteriorly towards the PML and then sutured towards the posterior mitral annulus. So the advantages, as I have already told, it is the most commonly used technique where we are using the tilting disc valve for mitral valve replacement, and it also maintains the chordal continuity to the AML. The disadvantage is that it disturbs the normal geometric relationship of the mitral subvalvular apparatus, which could alter the distribution of the regional LV wall stresses and disturb chordal tension during papillary muscle contraction. Thereby, it reduces LV systolic and diastolic function. Next technique is Khonsari's technique. So here what we do is the AML is detached from the annulus, and the Khonsari is divided into two, Khonsari 1 and the Khonsari 2. So in Khonsari 2 what we do is we excise the ellipse of a tissue. So here you can see, as in the figure A, elliptical tissue from the AML is excised, and the remaining part of the AML is reattached to the anterior annulus, so towards the AML side. But if the leaflets are very thickened and calcified, where we cannot excise the ellipse of the tissue, we excise 2 to 5 segments which have the most of the chordae. So these are reattached to the annulus. So this becomes a Khonsari 2. As you can see in the figure B, we have detached around 2 to 5 small segments of the AML which contains maximum of the chordae. These are reattached to the annulus again. The postmitral leaflet is retained completely, and the redundant leaflet tissue is folded up into the annulus by passing the valve sutures through the annulus and bringing them through the leading edge of the leaflet tissue. So the advantages of Khonzari techniques is like there is no left ventricular outflow tract obstruction, there is no interference with the prosthetic valve function, there are less chances of myocardial rupture. But the disadvantage is like the chordae could become stressed around the struts of the bioprosthesis, especially when you are using a bioprosthetic valve, thereby exerting more stress on the retained chordae. Next is the Mickey's technique. This is the most commonly used chordal preservation technique globally. So why it is most commonly used is because it maintains a normal chordal tension as the direction of the chordal force is more anterior than the one it was in the Ficky's technique. So here what we do is the incision, the AML is separated from the annulus and incised in the center, and the anterior lateral and the posterior medial commissures are also incised, and the papillary muscles are also split. The excessive cuspal tissue and the fibrous and calcific nodules are then excised. The two chordal attachments which are left over after excising the calcified and the thickened leaflets, they are sutured back to the respective places, where means either they are if they are originating from the anterolateral papillary muscle, they are sutured to the anterolateral commissure, and if they are originating from the posterior medial papillary muscle, they are sutured into the posterior medial commissure. The PML is then incised in the center, and the prosthetic valve is sutured in position after plicating the posterior mitral leaflet, and so here you can see the AML was first incised, split into the center. The leaflets were trimmed, and the leaflets which were left over later on after debulking and decalcified are sutured back to the respective commissures from where they originated. The advantages of this technique is like it is simple. There are very less chances of left ventricular outflow tract obstruction. It can be used especially for rheumatic valve disease where the leaflets are thickened and calcified. It also allows for placement of a larger prosthesis, and the use of a low profile prosthesis further reduces the incidence of leaflet obstruction from retained chordae. The next most commonly used technique was described by Rose and Oz. The AML is stretched posteriorly, so you pull the AML towards your side when you are operating, and an incision is placed in the center of the AML, and the rim of the remaining leaflet tissue which contains the marginal chordae is saved, whereas the remaining part is excised. After excising that elliptical tissue, as you can see in this figure, the AML is the remaining part is sutured with a running suture, and then later the AML is plicated towards the anterior mitral annulus. So advantages of this technique is like it reduces the bulk of AML. It also reduces the risk of left ventricular outflow tract obstruction, and also there is reduced risk of thrombosis on the redundant leaflet tissue. Various other techniques which are less commonly used are Wender and Salm's technique and Hughes technique. Now, what are the advantages? We have learned today different techniques, and also we have undergone the physiology, anatomy, everything. So most of you would have understood like what could be the advantages, what could be the disadvantages. Just to summarize, the advantages can be of chordal preservations are like it preserves the LV geometry and function. It reduces the chances of LV dilatation. It also reduces the chances of low cardiac output syndrome. It improves short and long-term survival, reduces risk of atrioventricular groove rupture, also reduces the risk of LV rupture, and also studies have shown that it also improves the right ventricular function indirectly. The disadvantages are like most of the people are not familiar with the chordal preservation, so it increases the operative time, there are chances that you can cause left ventricular outflow tract obstruction. With chordal preservation, if not done correctly, there may be a chance like you will have to place a smaller size valve. It can hinder the prosthetic valve function, especially when you have not selected a correct technique of chordal preservation with the type of valve which you are using. So please use Ficky's technique for tilting disc valve, and Mickey's or any other technique for the bileaflet valve if you are using a mechanical prosthesis, and it requires expertise. So here I'll conclude by telling that chordal preservation during mitral valve replacement confers several advantages as compared to the conventional mitral valve replacement, as it preserves left ventricular geometry and function. It also reduces the operative mortality, improves early and long-term survival, and also reduces the risk of ventricular rupture. With appropriate surgical technique, even large size prosthetic valves can be implanted, and the risk of prosthetic valve dysfunction and left ventricular outflow tract obstruction can be eliminated. There is emerging evidence which suggests that right ventricular function may improve significantly after left ventricular chordal preservation. Thank you.